Greetings, guys and gals. It's time to look at an amazing application. Let me tell you a bedtime story. 1987, that's probably before some of you were even born, is when this program was born. Aldous came up with the idea to create a native vector resolution independent application that they could use without going into CAD drawing programs and a lot of stuff that was out there and put it on the market for people like us. And this program has flourished, not just existed, for all of those years. Adobe picked them up several years ago. We're now at version CS6. The rest is history, as they say. Before we get into the program, before we start looking at all this stuff, and there is a lot of stuff in this program, let's make sure that we're all on the same page. And by that I mean, what's the difference between a vector image, which would be created in Adobe Illustrator, or a raster, which might be in, say, Adobe Photoshop? So I've got two things open here. This is a vector image created and born and bred in Adobe Illustrator. This document right here is a photograph taken with my digital camera, and it's a raster-based image. The difference between the two, images that are created with pixels, I call them bricks in a wall, and I think that's a good analogy. If you want a bigger brick wall, you put more bricks in it, don't you? If you enlarge a photograph in Photoshop, what you're doing is you're adding more bricks, but they're kind of blank bricks in a sense of detail. And that's why if I come over here to my zoom tool and begin zooming in on this flower, eventually, now this is a high-res image, so it's going to take a bit, but eventually you can see we've all done this before. I know you know this. It will begin deteriorating and blurring, or what we call in digital photography, pixelating. Illustrator is resolution independent, always has been, always will be. So if we go back to El Gato here, the cat, if I go up to the word view on the pull down menu and go down to outline, you can see how this shape was made. Again, if this is foreign to you, it won't be by the end of this lesson series. You'll be drawing things like this. This is a relatively simple shape as far as shapes go in Adobe Illustrator, but it's made out of math. So we go back to the word view and go back down to preview. Incidentally, that is a Command Y as a shortcut, which is not bad to know if you're flipping between the two. If I come over here and pick up Mr. Zoom tool again and begin enlarging the cat, and again, I think most of you know what's going to happen. Nothing. It's just going to get bigger. That's all. When you're dealing with resizing an image in Adobe Illustrator, you're changing the math. That is all that you're doing. And the math redraws the shape. So let's say theoretically, I decide to get on the new space program and I'm going to go to the moon and I'm going to lay this image on the moon. So when you look up, you don't see the man in the moon, you see the cat. I could do that. This image would go to any size I want it to be. And the other cool thing, when we change an image in Photoshop and make it bigger, we're changing the size of the file. Well, it's not exactly this accurate, but let me say something like this. If I go into a photograph like this, and I begin making it bigger on the screen, that's one thing. But if I make it bigger for print, that's another. And the image size would increase as I kept making the file bigger. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's not quite this precise. But if you double the size of the file, if it's 4x4 and you want to print it 8x8, you're going to at least double the size of the file in terms of its size on the hard drive. That's not true of vectors. Understand that. If I make this file bigger, and actually save it bigger, it's not really bigger on the hard drive in terms of file size, because all you're really doing is changing the math in the image, which I think is pretty cool when you think about it. So, Adobe Illustrator, logos, clip art like this, a lot of really cool things you can do in this program, and Photoshop is for the photos, because I get that question a lot. Why do I need Illustrator? If you like to do clip art, if you like to do logos, text effects, lay things out even like websites, this is an excellent program to use. 25 years has proved that. On to the next.